Welcome to this poetry reading series on Zoom presented by the Centre des Arts de Stanstead. My name is Shelley Pomerance. Je vous souhaite le bienvenu à cette lecture de poésie sur Zoom présentée par le Centre des Arts de Stanstead. This poetry reading comes to you from Stanstead in the Eastern Townships, the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederacy. We're grateful to be part of a long and proud history of creating and sharing stories on these lands. As you may already know, we alternate events, poets who write in French and those who write in English. And once in a while, we have an event where we put a French poet and an English poet together. Today's event is in English and features the poets Greg Santos and Gillian Sze, both of whom are in Jojage, also known as Montreal. But before we get to the poetry, we have a word from Gabriel Safdie, who created this series and programs our English language events. Gabriel.
Bienvenue à tous et à toutes. We are happy to welcome you to the Centre des Arts de Stanstead poetry reading series on Zoom, it being the fourth event of the third season. This reading series commenced while our events had been suspended owing to the advent of the pandemic. However, now as we have resumed presenting our live performances, thanks to general demand, we have decided to continue to broadcast these wonderful, well-appreciated readings on Zoom, always alternating between English and French. During this period, we have been making serious progress toward the realization of our plan to rebuild at the old Border Theatre, the 1912 cinema house built by the Haskell family on the US border, into a full-fledged performing arts center, Théâtre Sans Frontières, Old Theatre. I'm delighted to welcome Gillian Sze and Greg Santos join us today for the poetry reading. Two very fine poets. Gillian, also known for her lovely illustrated children's books, and Greg for his important editorial work and his teaching. But I will let Shelley Pomerance, our great host, now take over with the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Just before we get started, I think most of the people here have attended these events before, but just in case, I'll tell you how things work. I'll ask you when we begin to close your mics and your mic and your camera during the reading. If you want to comment on a poem during the event, please feel free to put your comment in the chat, or if you have a question for the poets. And when we get to the end of the reading, I might convey your questions to the poets, along with some questions of my own. And then when we get to the very end of the event, after we wind it all up, I'll ask you to open your mic and your camera, and we can all say hello and have a more informal chat that won't be on the recording. So to get down to brass tacks here, which is not a really poetic way to put things. I'm going to introduce our poets, Gillian Sze and Greg Santos. We're really, really happy to have both of you here today. Gillian is the author of multiple poetry books, including Peeling Rambutan, published by Gasborough Press, Redrafting Winter with Bushek Books, and Panicle, published by ECW Press, which were finalists for the QWF's A.M. Klein Prize for Poetry. Her work has received awards such as the University of Winnipeg Writers Circle Prize and the 3 Max Carte Blanche Prize, and has been translated into French, Slovenian, and Italian. Gillian studied creative writing and received a PhD in Études anglaises from the Université de Montréal. Her forthcoming collection of poems and essays, Quiet Night Think, explores the early shaping of a writer, the creative process, and motherhood, and will be published next spring with the ECW Press. Originally from Winnipeg, Gillian now lives with her family in Montreal, in NDG in fact, where she teaches creative writing and literature. You can find her website at Gillian Sze, that's spelled Gillian with a GILLIANSEESZE, all in one word, .com. And now over to Greg. Greg Santos is a poet, editor, and educator. He's the author of Blackbirds, published in 2018, Rabbit Punch, 2014, and The Emperor's Sofa, which came out in 2010. His most recent book is Ghost Face, published in 2020 with DC Books. He regularly works as a creative writing instructor and is the editor-in-chief of Carte Blanche, the online literary journal put out by the Quebec Writers Federation. He is an adoptee of Cambodian, Portuguese, and Spanish heritage and lives in Jojage or Montreal, also in NDG, I believe, with his family. There seems to be a proliferation of poets in NDG. His author's website can be found at gregsantos.me. Welcome to both of you. And I'm going to let you take it from here. I believe that, Greg, you're going to read first, and then we'll hear you alternating. So have fun.
Well, thank you so much, Shelley and the Centre des Arts de Stanstead, and for everyone tuning in today. It's a bit of a rainy days. It looks like here in Jojage and in NDG. So I'm grateful to be able to share some poetry with you online. And I will be reading from my book, Ghostface, which was published during the pandemic, launched last October, which it feels like it hasn't, it's gone by very quickly, and it feels funny to have launched the book during the pandemic, but it's thanks to readings like this that I've been grateful to be able to share my work with folks online like this. So just a little bit of a background on Ghostface. I like to see it as a book where it is a book of verse, but it's memoir in verse, I guess. It does touch on subjects such as identity, adoption, family, mythologies. And so I'm just going to kick off things with a poem called Childhood. Childhood. Taking Polaroid pictures of my Transformers. Dancing to Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal before my parents' mirror. Pretending the pool cleaning robot was a sea monster. Wrestling with Tata, my grandmother, breaking her glasses. Making my pet rock its cloth bed, tightening its leash. My goldfish, Tom, Jerry. My hermit crabs, Big Bertha, Hermie. My dwarf hamsters, Nutmeg, Tiger, Lucky. My sea monkeys, Sharky, Finn, Minnie, Mickey, George, Tiny Tim, Mo, Cutie Pie, Cuddles, Flip, Sprinkle, Joy, Micro Machine, Bumblebee, Marco, Polo, Chocolate Chip. Whew. At the barber, hiding Playboy in The Economist. My terror of clowns. My parents paying my birthday clown to leave. Book gift from my parents. Why was I adopted? My long-standing belief in ghosts. And so the name Ghostface is interesting. Just a little bit of a background. The original title of the book was called Dear Ghosts, and it turned out there were a number of collections out there. There's one particular bunch that sounded very similar or very close, and so it was thanks to my wife we had a discussion that we came up with the name Ghostface, and there are a number of ghosts that appear throughout the book from family members who are no longer with us, and conversations that I have with my pre-adopted self in a way. So it's been interesting to going through that those stories here. And so I'd like to go with my next. So this would have been the title poem of the collection. It's called Dear Ghosts. But I also like, I very much like the name Ghostface. And if you read through the collection, you see why. But this one's Dear Ghosts. One cold, rainy spring evening, as I was drifting off to sleep, M showed me a passage from a new book. Here, a part about the universe, atoms. Atoms, such a beautiful word. like cellar door and hope. Read this. You might want it for your book. In it, I read how when things die, their atoms don't disappear or cease to exist, but are redistributed. An ancient fern becomes coal. This lump of coal begets a diamond, and on until the atoms of the fern are nothing but a speck in the web of my open palm. Your faces flash in the attic of my memory. You are welcome, spirits. I toss off the covers, rush to my office. I'm struggling to capture this moment. How do I grasp onto these silvery apparitions? The moment is gone and I'm left gasping, grasping for something to hold. The distant sound of our dishwasher, some light rain outside, and it's gone, 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 redistributed away. Dear ghosts, where do your atoms reside? Father, Tata, Nano, Vovo, Chico, my grandparents, the birth family I never knew. I like to think that you still inhabit our planet. We contain multitudes, right? The galaxy in the speck of a birthmark, the one that I call my chocolate spot, my chocolatito plus, that cannot be smudged off. A planet, a galaxy, the cosmos, heaven. In the palm of my hand, the size of a mustard seed, head of a needle, where angels reside. And this next poem I had shared online this month. October is always a strange month for me. I do love Halloween, so I'm getting ready for that with my kids. But also, it's also the month where my father passed away when I was a teenager this month. And so this book does talk a lot about my experiencing this very impactful moment in my life as a teenager and kind of unpacking that. It's taken me years to do that. So a lot of the poems in this collection come from that and trying to make sense of a lot of stuff that has been kind of mulling about in my head. So, but this poem it comes from a sweet moment, as I don't always remember my dreams. So this time I remembered this dream that I had of my father, and I tried to write it down as best as I could. So it's called Rainbow Fish, and it's written in the form of a haibun, which is a Japanese form. I'm just showing you here on the page. Usually it has a prose part, section, and then it ends with a haiku. Rainbow fish. Dad showed up in my dream again. It has been a while. Waking up foggy this morning, I was gasping to make some sense of it all. I barely remembered, then suddenly it came. A rainbow fish swimming into view through the murk. I was in his office at my childhood home. He had a present for us. It was a box, transparent and fringed with gold. Inside was a delicate chain necklace with a clear pyramid hanging from its end. The pyramid glittered, a prism in the sunlight. Inside it were tiny flowers, flowers of lace, like baby's breath, but sweet-smelling. Cinnamon, I think, lavender, several other spices, I can't remember. Dad's voice said it was for us. I looked around. I don't know where his voice was coming from. He was no longer in the room. The kids were beaming with excitement. I told them, be careful with Grandpapa's glass box. But I was smiling too, before the dream modeled away into wakefulness. This tremendous fish, under marble rainbow skies, half out of water. Thank you so much. I'm just going to turn the reading over to Gillian. And thank you all for listening. We're going to continue again a little bit afterwards we're going to do a bit of a switching over of poems here.
Thank you, Greg. I'm so happy I get to hear you read your poems. I get to hear you from Ghostface. I should add that the first creative writing poetry course I took here at Concordia was with Greg. So we've been in each other's lives for a long time. So it's so lovely to see just your evolution, your growth, and obviously to see how prolific you are. So
same goes for you. I think it was also my first writing workshop, actually. So it's really wild how that's happened. So I'm looking forward to hearing your poems.
That's amazing. I was thinking instead of starting with Panicle, I was actually going to turn to the picture book. I'm encouraged to do so because there are 10 people here, so it's nice and intimate. And also Gabriel mentioned The Night is Deep and Wide and was intrigued by the book. So it's a little baby board book. It's 10 spreads, and it's geared towards children from 0 to 3 years old. I started reading a lot of picture books after having my son. And I remember coming across one picture book and thinking like, oh, this sounds like a villanelle, which is a closed form poem, and it consists of 19 lines, 2 refrains, and a very distinct A-B rhyme scheme. And so I remember after my son went to sleep, I scanned the book and I was like, no, it is not a villanelle. And I thought a villanelle is a perfect kind of form for a bedtime story. So I think that's what I'll do right now, if it's okay with everyone. I'll just read a read from a picture book. The illustrations are from Sue Todd, who's an artist in Toronto. She does lino cuts, which is why it has that sort of distinct texture. And it's called The Night is Deep and Wide. Plus, it's kind of fun listening to stories and seeing pictures because I don't think we get that so much anymore. I'm still practicing my library hold, so I hope everyone can see. The tulips close row by row, and shadows grow against the light. Moonlight falls on eyes that close. Lightning bugs flit and glow, moths flutter in and out of sight. The tulips close row by row. Where do the cats and songbirds go? They've curled against their mother's sides. Moonlight falls on eyes that close. A hush has settled, and it knows sleep is here. The dark entices the tulips to close, row by row. Even the home slumps and sighs low, inviting dreams to come inside. Moonlight falls on eyes that close. Lay your head, time has slowed, the night is deep and wide. Tulips close, row by row. Moonlight falls on eyes that close. And if we're really lucky, your child will fall asleep at this point. I'm just joking. I don't think that book can really work miracles, but it was really fun to write. It was fun to think about writing poems for a younger audience, and sort of language to use, sort of imagery to pluck out, because as mentioned, it's geared towards people who've been on this planet for about 3 years, and so it's quite limited. Anyway, I'm going to read primarily from my book Panicle, which came out a few years ago. It's I've always found it to be a bit of a strange collection. I would consider it an extension of my first book, Fishbones, which was a collection of ekphrastic poetry, so poems based on visual art. In this book, I continue with ekphrasis, but I also start looking at film. And return to just the gaze. So I'll start with the first. I'll start with the first poem, Calligraphy. This is how the beginning sounds: an ink stick grinding against stone, a dark circling like ancient gears. The water blackens from soot. We paint with the burnt ashes of pine trees. A quiet task lies before us, to compose even before the brush touches the paper, to know where each stroke will stay, to, as they say, have a bamboo completed in your chest. I wish I could show you, as I write this, the shame at my own frailty, the thin starts that lead only to blunders and irrecoverable nonsense made palpable through age or drink. To write heart in our language takes only 4 strokes, but so much depends upon the first mark. For the long hook tugs at the word center, holds everything together. The final 3 strokes resist and search for blanker spaces. A skilled calligrapher will tell you that they should give the impression of a sail filled by the wind. But a poor first stroke and the others will look like lost cotton wads tossed by the wind. The wind knows flaws, knows the infinite roots of everything it blows, and how nothing comes back the same way. In calligraphy, if a stroke falters, you must begin the word all over again. Perfection, we believe, is possible with repetition. But the brush is in my hand, and my hand grows stiffer. The hibiscus at the window closes in the evening. At least here at my desk, I can start again and write. This is how the beginning sounds. This is my heart. Look, at least there is that. So while I was writing this book, I happened to pick up another book of essays written by filmmakers. And there was a section in the book that was related to sound in cinema. I don't have a background in cinema at all, but I was really fascinated by these experts talking about sound in film. And so what I did was created a few poems really based on interesting lines, inspired by interesting lines that just stayed with me while reading these essays. And so I called these sound poems. So there's sound number 1, sound number 2. And so I'll just read a few of those. And so it begins with this epigraph for sound number 1. What kind of sound can you put on a film underwater? Only the bubbles? Sound number 1. The breaking water tucks you in as wholly and triumphantly as a baptismal gown. It is as loud as anything else that breaks when it reaches its peak. Laughter, solids, the day, countries, parties, lovers, and ice, but not as loud as clouds, voices, or the next line of a poem. When you push through the water past the gawping fish that realize you don't belong, everything resounds with your final cause. It sounds blue, and it comes from all directions. Sound number 2. Cinema could be as intelligent and could transport as much message and image and idea as it can with sound. There are things I want to show you, like the empty pause that encircles desire, or how Klimt knew that a woman bends her neck that far for a kiss only if she really wants it. I want to show you how quiet it gets when you're in the company of someone who no longer loves you. I want to remind you of that unseasonable memory when I bloomed the reddest flowers. Who knew an instant could be so endless and vacant? I want to point out the stony space that the dead take up, that an epitaph is always too short, and that death's impetuous timing is measured by all the books that will never be read. But more than anything, I want to show you something smaller, how the smell of winter at night has the same crisp scent as the sound of the word biscuit, the touch of vellum in your mouth. I'll read sound number 5. I'll just skip over to sound number 5. There's a dark room that contains all sounds since the beginning of time. First there was a bang, then a patter onto land, the squeak of new legs, the calcifying quiet of progress. In one corner, someone heard a chorus of frogs stuttering the air. In another corner, someone heard sighs, sneezes, groans, a long, shimmering laugh. Mouths tested their instruments, voice suddenly shaped to catch, slur, roll, or cease. Things imitated things. A range of rumbles passed from dog to bear, stomach to thunder. Mockingbirds in the rafters sang like blackbirds, jays, and frogs. Humans too imitated the frogs, koa, koa, and began to ask questions, kwa, kwa. We turned to each other and hands groped, demanded que c'est or qu'est-ce que c'est. Years and years, the room croaked without tales or answers. Even now, everything is still screaming up into the black air. What? Now and then, a game of echo. Now and then, a new sound. I'm going to turn it back to Greg, and I just to continue with this new sound phrase. I've been reading Greg's work for years now, and one thing he's always done well is playing with the surreal, being very light. I mean, even the title of this book, Rabbit Punch, for example, says so much. And when I read Ghostface, I was very, very stunned by this new sound coming from Greg. I know you mentioned it's a far more personal collection, and I think it's just really amazing that even as you write, even after all these years, you can still develop this new sound, which I really love.
Thank you, Gillian. I appreciate that. I think it's something that I also feel really grateful to be able to have seen Gillian's work progress. I know from our workshops together, she was always a poet I admired. So was always very also impressed with her work that she put out, and also the playing with ekphrasis and with other forms. And I was very interested in hearing about your interest in film and sound and the sound poems, and also now with your picture books for children. It's something that's on my to-do list down the line, but just really, I think, love to see the growth of another fellow author, a parent and an author. We're both parents, and it's interesting to see how that's kind of changed in our writing. And I appreciate Gillian's mentioning about the growth, I guess, too, of my work.
I was gonna say, so Greg became a parent before I did, and I remember seeing him at Blue Metropolis, and your daughter was just a baby, like a toddler, and you were doing an event. And I thought, wow,
Yeah.
how does Greg do this? How does he do the writing and then the performing and then the parenting? And yeah.
Well, I also have my wife is a big part, my co-parent and partner in all of this. So that's definitely important to have that along that support, and also she does so much work as a parent and also as someone who I trust with my work. And I had mentioned earlier about how Ghostface was thanks to discussion with her that we changed the name, yeah. So definitely it's been cool to I think see our growth as writers, but also as things change in our lives, and you see how things adapt. So anyway, yeah, thank you
You
for
inspire me, Greg.
No, ditto. I think it's because I think you came out with Fishbones. First, I think it was with DC Books with my same publisher. So which is really cool, and I thought that was like just to see your work and your work over the years has been so cool. So yeah, it's been neat, and I always think it's GS. That's how I sign, and Gillian's is also GS. And anyway, it's kind of cool how that's worked out. So I'm just gonna I guess end with I'm trying to think which poems I have listed here. The idea of when your picture book has this lightness and dark in the pictures as well, and I think this wonder about the moon and the sky above, I think makes me want to read this next poem here, which is called Shall We Dance? The Mars Insight lander touched down on the red planet on November 26, 2018. I am 37 years old. At the beginning of December, some space wind blows past a seismometer and is recorded by NASA to study Mars quakes. How odd it feels to write down that word. On this date, December 7, 2018, as my children cut through water during their swimming lessons, twirling about as if in zero gravity, I click on a link from my laptop. Wind blasts across the lander's solar panels, and I am an earthling on this tiny blue planet, listening to Martian wind for the first time. Today, I get a haircut, shrug on a blazer for an evening party, mingle amid the clinking of wine glasses. We celebrate the holidays. Listen, heard best with headphones. Can you hear that low pitch? It is Mars's heartbeat. There is so much darkness right now. The building of walls, our deep-rooted fear of aliens. Yet we are alive. We are alive to hear a Martian zephyr, so privileged to hear the first sounds ever recorded on another planet. Today, I woke up to my son snuggling me, awakened by his words, "You are the best daddy ever." I feel so lucky to be the best daddy ever, to be alive right now. I admit I do not always feel this grateful. Small irritants, microaggressions have a tendency to ruin the day. The gravity of our world always pushing down on our fragile bodies. We are not always thankful, but today I am. I hope you are too. For an instant, in the grand scheme of things, I am thankful. To feel this alien wind blow across my heart is but a reminder that I have lived to hear my children's breath, a zephyr, a reminder that I am sharing this tender moment between our planet and Mars. Dear Earthlings and Martians, may we continue sharing this grateful space dance together for eons. And I guess an other poem about being a parent, I think it's something that has crept up in my poems and become it's part of my life. That we find humor and lightness, and also moments where we learn from our children, and it's try to capture that as best I can. And I think a book like Ghostface is one where I do talk about history and identity and my family, and with family members who are no longer with us. It's a way for me to document things that I might forget and that I hope will be a gift to our children for when they're older. But this one's an interesting one, which, if you remember, Crystal Pepsi is one. Anyway, you'll see where I go with this. Crystal Pepsi. I watch you asleep in your crib, my heart a pulsar emitting beams of light. Like hummingbirds, your eyelids flicker. Here I am, wishing I were a net. When I am away from you, my heart calls out a plaintive whale song. I must admit I find this startling when I am showering or on the web. They say you cannot hold on to a snowflake, but if Pepsi can create clear cola, what then is not possible? So slightly different in tone to my other ones, but I always feel like Gillian mentioned, a previous book, A Rabbit Punch. There's humor is a way that I've always enjoyed, I guess, incorporating into poems when I can, just because if I'm able to make myself chuckle at something, I'm hoping that maybe it'll do that for other people as well. Or what I loved about the art form of poetry is you can play with humor as well as with other emotions like grief, sadness, but even incorporating all of that in the same poem is fascinating to me. But I'm going to end my readings with, since today is, I guess, Halloween Eve, with a poem called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Just that because our Halloween decorations are up and the costumes are getting ready, and I thought this would be a fun way to end the reading for myself. Do not enter gingerbread houses, no matter how enticing the icing. Do not take candies from the children of strangers. Saying Bloody Mary 3 times facing a mirror in the dark is a no-no. Whatever you do, don't leave your foot dangling over the bed overnight. Skulking through the woods and the wind whispers your name. Oh boy, that's the Wendigo, my child. In Cambodia, they are taught to fear the Ap, also known as Krasu in Thailand. These apparitions are usually women, their faces young and beautiful. If you were to look down, they're bodiless. The Ap is but a floating head, their spine, guts, icky entrails are all that's left dangling in midair. See their hovering glow, and you're a goner. The Khmer people keep a spirit house near their homes. These stilted wooden structures lead ghosts like Aps away from the living. Burn some fake money to keep them feeling wealthy. Leave a snack for them to nosh on, sticky rice, fruits, coconuts. Donuts are a good bet, since ghosts have sweet tooth. Duh. Sport a red bracelet or tie a red string around your wrist. Doing so will keep your soul from being whisked away from your body. The string reminds you to practice compassion and kindness. Red is the color of good luck and bravery. They say red makes people hungry too. It's also my son's favorite color, so there's that. You know what they say, happy ghosts don't bother the living. Therefore, keep a whoopee cushion, joy buzzer, and a joke book on your person at all times. Cross your fingers, knock on wood, super glue a penny to your hand. Heck, toss your old wardrobe out the window, wear red from head to toe, just to be safe. See, good luck will follow you, skipping down the sidewalk, her braids bobbing down with every leap, to the ends of time, maybe even longer. Thank you so much. And I pass the reading on to Gillian.
You make me laugh, Greg. Your poems always make me laugh.
My job is done.
I love the mention of our initials. That was something I think we noticed from the very first. And it's such a small
it's a small thing, but something needs.
Yeah, it was just something small, but it was something we noticed, and then we just now it's like a sign. Now it's gained meaning through the years. Okay, so I'm going to return to Panicle. I'll just read a few poems from a longer piece called Staging Paris, or Tableau Vivant. So I'll just move our time, our sense of space over there. And then I'll end with a poem from my forthcoming book, Quiet Night Think. So I've been to Paris once, and I went because it was an exchange program with URM. It was a course that was taking place. And so I zipped over to Paris for that week. And it was like I was never there because we were in classes all day. And then the evening would happen. But by then I was just too tired to really absorb anything or see anything. I still took notes, whenever I'm in any sort of space, I took notes. And so, wrote down those things you observe, those things you notice. And then when I came back, I started reflecting on my time there. And I couldn't, I guess it was hard for me to remember how I engaged with that space because it felt like a blur. I was just in classes all day, which is why I think now, I've entitled this piece "Staging Paris" or "Tableau Vivant." There's something sort of static about those memories, and it's a series of 10 stagings. And I'll just read. Let me see my time. I think I'll read 3 or 4 of them. These little prose poems. Providing instructions as to how to stage Paris. So one female figure and one male figure. This tableau is taken from the first day in Paris. The scene focuses on a young woman putting away her camera and tucking her fingers into her sleeves. It is January. She is too hungry and underslept to be enchanted. She avoids the late afternoon shadows. The scenery consists of long shadows of trees, toppled vines, a passing tram full of people coming from work. She crosses Saint-Jacques and an old man opens the trunk of his car and looks at her. He is wearing the kind of hat that suggests he is not opposed to smoking a pipe in the evenings. He is about to tell her that she looks lost. She is about to invite him for this aimless stroll, to pause at the corners with her, to make her turn around before she takes them too far. Lights flicker to the right of the stage, but never turn on. The background holds up the sun, now nodding off. The foreground should be shadowy, but carry splinters of rays between its branches. 2, one female figure. This tableau represents an early morning scene. A woman wakes. Her shirt has bunched up and a curtain glimmers with light. The window is to her right and the audience is to her left. The furniture in a room is typical of a hotel: a simple armchair, a landscape painting, a wooden table, and upside down glasses placed on a doily. There is no music, only the sound of church bells, disjointed and growing louder. The woman pulls back the curtain, and there's a bright flash, but then she can see the street below, and again, it takes her some time to place herself. The street is like a face she recognizes, only after it recognizes her first. In the corner of the room leans an umbrella. She takes it as a sign of maturity. She is prepared for something. A green fire burned just as she releases the curtain will add to the beauty of the morning. Accompanying music is secular and of a lively genre. 4, 2 female figures and one dream. This tableau is taken from a legend that claims all the women in Paris are beautiful. One woman follows the other to bed and steps into her dream. There, the 2 women reunite and meet in a checkout line at a grocery store. The woman from Paris wears black nylons, pointed shoes with tight laces, a blouse tucked neatly into her skirt. She is graceful and moves easily as a scarf dangling from a hook. The other woman finishes paying and walks away with her hands full. She has an American clumsiness to her and is angled like a floor lamp with a crooked shade. She walks away, and here the music begins. She then turns around and returns to the Parisian, leans in, kisses her, and says, "Indulge me." Light shines brilliantly where their mouths touch. The accompanying music should be soft and plaintive. 6. This tableau is as follows. The Seine is flooded. A tall man with Celtic yellow eyes is strolling at a relaxing pace while rolling a cigarette. A young woman's hair blows easily in his direction. The man wears a thick wool jacket that ends halfway down his thighs. He dons a matching fisherman's cap and speaks through the filter stowed in the corner of his mouth. He is all dexterity and tidiness, the task of rolling the cigarette almost appearing noble. He stops, leans over, and notices that the river is flooded. She, however, is unsurprised. He asks her if she has the pull of the moon. She admits to being part satellite. I'll read the last, the 10th tableau. I think my daughter is coming in. And hold on one second. Hi, Ryder. That's okay. Oh, that's a nice little burp. Okay, so we have a little visitor. My daughter's just popped in. That's fine. She'll just hang out here. I'm going to read a couple of poems, okay? I'll just read the last tableau in Staging Paris, and then I'll just read one final poem. So 10, one female figure and one male figure. This tableau represents the last day. Ticket stubs are arranged in a mosaic outside the station. The tunnels chug like toilet pipes. A dog with a dirty belly walks around the woman's suitcase. A man sells lychees outside the metro. The young woman counts her euros. She's run out of everything: soap, clean socks, patience. Her attention is on her coin purse. She looks at the audience, but then turns to the fruit seller. Eyes are fixed on his hands in his pockets, and then to his face, whose expression is pleasant but neutral. A pigeon lands by a small stand. The dimensions of his table, where the fruits are laid out, are 2 feet by 3 feet. Make the drop curtain of dark green cambric. Now the sound of a tram approaching is heard. The light behind her grows stronger, but then dims. It is as if, she says, it is as if. My daughter's coming just in time, actually, for me to talk a little bit about my my next book, which is coming out in April. It's called Quiet Night Bank, and it's a collection of poems and essays. There are 6 essays in there, and some poems and a final long poem. So I think it's probably the most generically diverse book, but it's about my about motherhood and writing, the difficulty of writing while being a parent, as I'm sure Greg knows, or just that sort of tension and struggle to, for example, focus on a reading while holding a 3-year-old, a hiccuping three-year-old. So I'll just read one poem from that book. It's called Multiverse. Okay, you can keep drawing on that. I'm just going to don't draw on these words, okay? So Multiverse. She touches a hand to my belly and tells me that I will learn something new about love. It's another dimension, she says. We are in a bar where everyone is drowning beer, and I thirst for the cold, familiar taste of summer. There is still snow on the ground. Everyone has started early. I feel doubly stalled. Recently, you told me some physicists believe our world is only one possibility, but elsewhere, on other planets, other universes, other dimensions, exists every other possibility imaginable. When we die, our consciousness bifurcates and jumps from here to there. We're immortal, you said, odd. The baby moves. After 7 months, I've come to know how it turns restlessly at night or jigs in the morning after coffee. There is, for now, only one possibility. Each motion you've put in me, singular and unrepeatable. So I'll just take this moment to say thank you to everyone for coming here, and also thank you to Shelley for hosting and Gabriel for having us, organizing this, and also Greg for agreeing to read with me. This is awesome.
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you, Greg. And we have a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit of time for a couple of questions. Can you talk about when and why you first started writing poetry? Greg, can we go with you?
Sure. When I started, I guess when I was a teenager, I guess I took in English classes, I learned about what poetry was, but it wasn't until like high school, I guess, when I started writing songs on guitar. So a lot of my first poems were lyrics for songs, or vice versa. They were songs that I kind of turned into poetry. And that's kind of how it started, is the musicality of words that drew me in and to writing poetry. I didn't always know what it was at first, but I think music was my entrance and lyrics to poetry.
And you, Gillian?
When I first started writing, I think I thought I was writing short fiction, but I realize now I think it was super short fiction. I think they were more like prose poems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I slowly made that switch. I started learning about the line breaks and the importance of lineation. And I think that writing in verse felt a little more natural for me. Yeah.
Can you say what ignites a poem? What makes a poem happen? Where inspiration comes from?
Yeah, well, I think it's just an image, cool word. Sometimes I like, if there's a word that sounds neat, I make a note of it. See if I can work it into a poem in a way that sounds, effortless. But I think being a writer or just being creative, it means just observing kind of the spaces around you, the conversations that take place, the things you see, the weird things your kids may say, and kind of cataloging all of it. And hopefully something will just coalesce.
And you, Greg?
I think similarly, like Gillian said, is like could be a word or an image or something that pops up. I used to carry around a little notebook, like a Moleskine one, but now it's often writing down words on my notes of my phone, and then transcribing it again later onto the computer. But I think it can come from sometimes like Julian says, funny things our kids say or do, to being, I guess, open to the world around us as we observe, and that also touches on like movies that I'm able to watch maybe late at night when everyone's asleep, or books that I'm reading and then jot something down. But I think again, I say one of the things I've been saying is living a life poetic, which whatever that means, I'm not sure, but that it's like observing the world and being kind of like open to the poetry that is there. And it sounds kind of, I don't know, funny, but that's how I feel like when I'm capturing words and saving them for later.
That's well put, I think. Can you talk a little bit about other poets that might inspire you, other poets you read?
Sure. I could go next, I guess. I'm thinking of poets that I try to read a lot of different genres when I can, just to be open to see what's going on. I'm somewhat partial to like scary books and things. I'm not sure why, or like movies and things like horror movies, and now is the time for me to really enjoy that around Halloween. But some books that I could just mention that have been that I've read recently that I enjoyed a lot is one is by Pearl Peary, who is I think based out of Wakefield, Quebec, and it's her book Footlights. This is one book that I just been reading recently, and really enjoy these poems of everyday details and daily strange wonders, these observations. I think these moments that Pearl captures are quite lovely. Another poet and whose work I just read was Nishga by Jordan Abel, and like I say, I enjoy it's not a book that is necessarily enjoyable because of the content in it. It's very powerful, and it's personal, autobiographical. It's it addresses the complicated legacies of residential school system, and I think he does it in a way that's very again powerful with using various texts from transcripts and notes to images, photography from family, and also very interested in hybrid works. And I guess the last one that I wanted to just kind of say is really because of talking about spooky things is Tony Trillo, who is a I don't know if you can see that. This is a book called Proof Something Happens, or Proof Something Happened, and he's a Chicago-based poet. And he wrote this book about from the point of view of these folks who claim to have been abducted by aliens, but he treats it in a way that's very not tongue in cheek, but is so there are a lot of persona poems based on these people's experiences, real people, and again a fascinating book, and it just I think came out during the pandemic. Those are some books that have been mulling around in my head and that I've been reading recently.
Okay. We have a question. I don't know whether I can say it. Well, actually, Gillian, do you want to answer that? And then I have a question for you from somebody in the audience.
Oh, let me see. The poets that I enjoy, I enjoy a lot of contemporary Canadian poets. Often whatever I see trending on Twitter, especially when people post their work, I always like to see what's very current. What are people producing now? It's quite an amazing range, I think, right now in CanLit. Many different voices. I have to say a lot of my writing really is inspired by the imagists. Williams has always been someone I turn to for his simplicity, or his seeming simplicity, but the way he uses the space on the page, is the concrete images. We were just talking about Anne Carson earlier. Definitely Anne Carson is someone I admire. She's very smart. She has she's very like one thing I'm always impressed by is just her process seems so easy. It's like, oh yeah, here I'm just thinking about Ceylon, and I'm thinking about and then I'm just gonna bring
I
them.
don't think it is that easy, though.
But well, I'm sure it's not. But there's something in the writing that when I read it, there's a lot of play, a lot of enjoyment there. And yes, absolutely, it's challenging to read, but there's she's always looks like she's having fun. So,
You wrote your thesis on her, didn't you?
yeah, I did.
Earlier, but before everybody, I think, was on the Zoom. So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, just one little thing. My dissertation, my doctoral was on William Carlos Williams.
Wow.
Mentioned Williams and imagism that Earl Burney turned me on. I was too much under the impacts of Eliot at the time. This is many years ago, and just to let you know that. Anyway, it's just go ahead with the question. I have something else to say. Go ahead with the question, please.
No, that's all right. I think our question has been retracted, but go ahead, Gabriel.
Oh, okay. No, the other thing is, it was a very interesting for me, having gone through quite a few readings at this point. First of all, you brought in children's literature, which I think is our real first children's story, as far as I can remember it. And I'm sure of it. And it was beautiful how that came in. And then your daughter comes in, and then you're demonstrating to us the very thing you're writing about is motherhood and writing and all that. And that was so beautiful. I mean,
that was definitely a first. We haven't had a child come on.
First child, first children's book, and it really brought it to life in a way that I thought was very special. And I'm so, there she is. What's her name?
Eider.
Eider, okay. Eider.
Yeah.
Hi. You're old Eider. But the point is, the other thing is the way you two interacted. I felt like I was back in a workshop, kind of a creative writing class workshop thing. And you brought the poetry, the interaction of poets to life in a beautiful way, I thought. And that was really interesting. And so the two firsts in a way. In the French side, we had a couple of interactions where the poets talked a bit more in that way too. But this was so. Thank you both for this wonderful interaction and for bringing on children. And so
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
beautiful.
I think I'm going to wrap things up here, and then we
But
can
the question was Brian Traherne. It had to do with he wanted to hear more about the impact of cinema and other art form on your work. That's what he wanted to ask. That he was asking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, he said, my question would ask Gillian about her frequent inspiration from film and other arts. That's from Brian Traherne. Yeah, so I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, well, definitely around the time, okay, I don't even know where this book came from, the collection of essays from filmmakers. I feel like it's one of those secondhand books that I brought with me from Winnipeg because my father loved books, and they were just a range of subjects. And I guess I carried it with me, and around the time I was reading it, I was also working on a short film with Sofia Bogdanovich, who's a Toronto filmmaker.
Yeah.
And she was doing sort of adaptations of her grandmother's Polish poetry. And then we just struck up a collaboration. So we worked on.
Yeah. So it's like that. It's more like.
Right. Yeah. Sophia and I are good friends. She's someone who's creative and someone I really admire.
Associations, interactions, that kind of thing that brings it on. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt like we had something going, and so we created a short film based on a poem I wrote that's in Peeling Rambutan called "Arriving," and that was a very, very fun process, which I actually talk about in Quiet Night Think, because we were using a Bolex camera, which is a camera they don't really make anymore, and you have to wind it up, and we were using expired film that we bought from eBay, and so we really had no idea if it would even work out. And so I'm always interested in seeing how other people create as well. I've also collaborated with Jessica Heemstra. She's a poet, but she's also a visual artist, and so we did a collaboration here in Panicle where I wrote a creative translation of a French poem, and then gave her the poems, and then she created the art for it. But
and your essays,
fun conversations.
Your essays in your new book are about also to creativity and so on, right? Your essays.
Yeah. The essays in the book are about motherhood, but also about writing.
Yeah. And Greg, you brought in family too, and my grandchildren call me Tata, so I want you to know that.
Well, Tata was
and my son-in-law of my older daughter is from Chile, and I think it started with that. But they always call me Tata. All my grandchildren, well, all I have 4. But anyway, so that's Tata is well alive as an epithet for grandparents.
Yes.
So that was nice also for the family side. Okay, Shelley, I better let you get on with this.
That's okay. That's nice, Gabriel, that you came in with that. So I think I'm going to wrap things up here, and then we'll be able to have a more informal discussion afterwards. So thank you, Gillian and Greg. Gillian's last book is Panicle. Her forthcoming collection is Quiet Night Think, lovely title, coming out in April. And both those books are with ECW Press. Greg's latest collection is Ghostface from DC Books. There it is. If you would like to watch and listen to this event again, or if you want to send it to a friend, or if you're interested in any of the other events in this series, you can go to the YouTube channel of the Centre des Arts de Stanstead, and you'll find the link for that in the chat section here. You can also look on the Centre des Arts de Stanstead's Facebook page, where we post the readings as well, or at least, yes, on the Facebook page, you'll find them there. Just to let you know that our next reading will be Saturday, November 13th at 4 p.m. with poets Nathalie Watain and Vanessa Courville, and I hope you can return and be with us then. And before we wind things up, I would like to thank the team at the Centre des Arts de Stanstead, Charlotte Guptar, Luce Couture, Diane Rejambal, and of course, Gabriel Safdie. My name is Shelley Pomerance. Thank you, everybody, for being here.